Yes. Okay, I gotta calm down. The leaks have been wrong in the past and I've gotten my hopes way too high. This is another one of those times where I'm gonna be let down later, but I like holding on to this little like Christmas Eve moment where I'm excited, it sounds real, it sounds believable, and I'm thinking it's gonna happen. So today we're talking about Apple refreshing the standalone monitor business in a really incredible way. Let's begin. So a leaker on Twitter that goes by the name of Dylan, keep in mind he is not a supply chain analyst per se, but has gotten a handful of things correct in the past, is talking about how LG is currently working on 3 standalone displays without branding of any kind, but the specs line up mysteriously close to what Apple is working on for next year. So one of these standalone monitors is 24 inches, and then one of them is 27 inches, and it's mini LED with 120 hertz. I feel like if this was not Apple, you know, like partnering with LG on a project, which they've done in the past, you know, LG supplied the 5K displays that Apple's been using in their iMacs for years, and of course LG sold the ultra-fine monitors, which were using similar panels. That could be what this is. If it was any other company or any other partnership, they would not be stopping at 120 hertz, which is what Dylan is saying the specs of these displays are. If it was a gamer monitor just trying to emphasize the higher refresh rate, then it would easily be 144 hertz or 165 hertz. That's what everybody in the gaming community is typically using. So the fact that the spec is saying 120 hertz increases the likelihood that this is likely Apple branded displays that haven't launched yet. But that's not the most exciting part for me. What's most exciting is this is the first time we're actually hearing some references to a 32-inch version of the mini LED 120 hertz display panel, which Dylan is saying is actually rocking some custom silicon. So given the specs align with Apple's mentality of, you know, dynamic range and refresh rate and promotion and all that, and there's rumored to be a display larger than 27 inches, it sounds like, if I'm understanding this correctly, 2022 might be looking at like a 27-inch iMac Pro with 120 hertz and mini LED, which already sounded pretty cool in my view, right? Like, I'm not a big fan of the chin, which it likely will have, but overall, the specs there already sound amazingly good. Consider you cannot find a like desktop-sized mini LED 120 hertz display on the market. I've checked, I've tried. They really don't exist, and that's what I've been trying to partner with my MacBook Pro for a while now, but hearing Dylan talk about there being a standalone monitor gets me really pumped, because this is exactly what we've been waiting for. I wanted an external monitor, a big one in particular, that I could use alongside my MacBook Pro, but I didn't want the display to be worse than the already amazing onboard screen I've been using. I love the high refresh rate, I love the dynamic range, I love the pixel density, everything about it, so just taking those specs, blowing them up to a larger footprint, and hopefully making that, you know, more affordable than the Pro Display XDR, that would be an amazingly good deal. And 9to5Mac reported previously that Apple is working on a more affordable version of the Pro Display, but they didn't give us many details, and finally hearing today's leaks is actually giving me some more concrete evidence of what they have in store. So in the past we talked about Apple using their own silicon in a display, which isn't necessarily proof that this is an iMac or it's like a standalone device. It's likely Apple using their own chip and their own graphics as the driver for this display, because you're going to need a little bit of extra processing power on board this monitor, likely because it's a very high resolution and you won't have to pull as much processing power off of the MacBook Pro you're partnering with it, or the Mac Pro that might launch along with it, to output at a 6K resolution, especially if this monitor is going to be doing a 6K resolution and capable of outputting at 120 hertz. That's going to be an insane amount of data, and I wouldn't be shocked if even Thunderbolt was struggling a little bit to output an image that high. So this is likely going to be one of those situations where it only is able to achieve those specifications when partnered with an Apple Silicon Mac, maybe even reach the point where you need an M1 Pro or M1 Max to actually output to this monitor. And the M1 MacBook Air or the M1 MacBook Pro, they're not going to have the GPU or the throughput with their I/O to maintain a monitor this powerful and this good. But the truth is, I've tried using 32-inch monitors in the past and I've really liked them. I like having that big screen, and I actually got way too addicted to it. So going back to the iMac Pro, once I went with a more clean, minimal desk setup, that was like the one compromise, is that the screen felt a little bit smaller. But in case you're curious, yes, I would absolutely be interested in this monitor, particularly if they can price it below $3,000. We don't hear from Dylan any word on when they plan on unveiling this monitor, but if I were a betting man, which I'm not, although I am a speculative boy, I would predict they would unveil this new Pro Display XDR alongside the Apple Silicon Mac Pro, which, according to Tim Cook, has to be a unveiled at some point next year. If they want to do it like they did in 2019, they would unveil it at Quadruple UDC in the summertime, but it wouldn't ship until later in the year. You know, they give some hype periods where people are like, okay, we know it's coming, but we don't have the configurator, so we don't know all of the technical pricing, so we gotta wait a few more months before you can actually buy it. Or if Apple wants to be a little bit more direct and not have that big waiting period, it's very likely that the Mac Pro will be the last Mac in the lineup to get Apple Silicon, which means they might not unveil this new monitor until October or November of next year. So we may have a while, which is fine. Gives me some time to save up for this crazy expensive monitor, but I'm personally totally fine like spending thousands of dollars on a screen if it's like perfect. If I don't have any major flaws with it, like a $1,000 stand or white bezels or a chin and that kind of crap. All that I would not tolerate, but I've now reached my standard of new displays I buy with my Mac. Like if I'm buying a new screen, I need mini LED and I need 120 hertz. The resolution is kind of an afterthought. Like I would buy a 32-inch monitor even if it was 4K or 1440p. Pixel density doesn't matter too much for me, but it's Apple. Of course, they're not going to compromise there. But it's also interesting hearing about these other display options that LG is working on. I think this might potentially be a revival of the ultra-fine lineup, where there will be a cheap monitor that's using the same panel as the 24-inch iMac. Maybe that one's around $1,000 or so, which will be funny because the 24-inch iMac's only a couple $100 more, and it comes with a whole computer. It says a lot about how much the M1 chip actually costs Apple. But then if they do an ultra-fine monitor that's 27 inches with mini LED and 120 hertz, that they could probably charge a lot more for, and if the design is good, it might be a good compromise for people not willing to shell out $3,000 or not willing to pay for a $1,000 stand, telling people, okay, if you don't like the Pro Display, you can go with the ultra-fine, which is smaller, but the specs are still good, and the only compromise is maybe the external design is a tad bit more boring. But either way, I think the standalone monitor business has been completely neglected by Apple, and I want them to spend some more time on the prosumer market, not so much the reference monitor market, because people in the reference monitor market don't seem too impressed with the Pro Display anyway, and prosumers don't want to spend the kind of money the Pro Display is. So this gets me pumped, this gets me excited, and I'm likely gonna be disappointed when Apple doesn't do exactly what I want. So let me know what you guys believe in the comments down below. Thank you all for watching. This is your Apple Sheep here. I'll see you in the next one.